It's time for Fridays with AI, where we ask AI to rewrite Philly sports history. Every Friday, only on This Day in Philly Sports History.
That's right. It is Friday. Don't think we forgot. We spent Fridays with AI, and we're going to continue on the trade deadline sort of path. Fast approaching, less than a week away. We talked about Ruben, who wheeled and dealed, and for all anybody wants to say about Ruben Amaro Jr., I went on a rant earlier this week. I need Dave Dombrowski to channel that inner Ruben Amaro. You need to go all in. And Ruben Amaro was not afraid to go all in. But let's go back to 2009. And in 2009, he traded for Cliff Lee, was a big part of them making a run back to the World Series. And he was outstanding in the World Series, specifically game one of that game series against the Yankees. But then in offseason, they traded him and then traded for Roy Halladay. Now, what they traded for Halladay had nothing to do with the picks. So it was sort of like let me get some things for Cliff Lee, and then I'll trade these pieces to Toronto for Roy Halladay. And I think a lot of people kind of confuse that, myself included, thinking he made that trade and then sent those prospects. They were two sets of prospects. So in a alternate reality, which I asked AI to create, the Phillies could have kept Halladay and Lee for the 2010 season. And I said, AI, what would have happened had the Phillies had both of those pitchers for the 2010 season? Because Cliff Lee never wanted to leave Philly in the first place. He said he would have stayed for less money to stay in Philly. And then in this alternate reality, he does. He takes less money and stays. They're able to work it out. They still give Halladay the extension. They still use the same package. That's who Toronto wanted, including the guy that is part of the trivia question. Farm system was still a concern, but that's okay because you'll see the way Ruben is able to navigate that. So how does the 2010 season play out with Roy Halladay and Cliff Lee in the same rotation? So your rotation is essentially Roy Halladay, Cliff Lee, Cole Hamels, Joe Blanton, and J.A. Happ. At that trade deadline that season, there's not really a need to make the trade for Roy Oswalt, which kind of saves some of the Phillies' future bull or farm system pieces. They do upgrade slightly their bullpen, and this is the key that changes this whole narrative in this alternate reality, because Cody Ross killed the Phillies in the NLCS in reality, our reality. But in this alternate reality, the Phillies aren't so concerned with getting another starting pitcher. They want to have a bat that can play, good pinch hitter, somebody who can go in and start. And we saw what happens when Cody Ross got hot, and somebody who can get hot and kind of pick up the slack for this team when they are getting older and things like that. So the Phillies wanted Cody Ross anyway in 2010, put in a waiver claim, got blocked by the Giants because the Giants picked him up before the Phillies did. And then you know how it played out for the Giants. But in this reality, we get Cody Ross at the trade deadline for a lot less, some bullpen help for a lot less than what we would have had to give up for Roy Oswalt. So that kind of saves the bullpen a little bit there. But how does it play out then? Well, it makes a huge difference because you don't have Cody Ross on the Giants killing the Phillies because Cody Ross is on the Phillies. So they do end up beating the Giants behind Lee and Halladay just dominating. And then they go on to beat the Rangers in the World Series because Cliff Lee was not a member of the Rangers, who that's where he ended up that year. So in 2008, Phillies win the World Series. 2009, they go back and lose to the Yankees. 2010, they still have Cliff Lee, add Roy Halladay. They win 2 of 3. How does it play out for 2011? Well, there's no Roy Oswalt, no 4 aces or anything like that, but it's still Hamels, Halladay, Lee, Blanton, and J.A. Happ are your starters in 2011. Unfortunately, the Phillies can't change the injury bug. But maybe Ryan Howard doesn't get hurt on that because they're not playing. It's not as much pressure. He's not trying to swing as hard. Who knows? But let's just assume, for the sake of argument, AI said Ryan Howard still gets hurt in the NLDS. I still think it might have played out differently, but this is Fridays with AI, so this is what AI thinks. The Phillies end up beating the Brewers in the NLCS after taking care of the Cardinals. The pitching goes to the World Series, or the pitching carries them to the World Series because they don't have Ryan Howard. They have a rematch with the Rangers, lose it in 6 games. Offense struggles without Ryan Howard. And then moving forward into 2012, unfortunately, they all do still get super old, super fast. You have Ryan Howard who misses the start of the season. Phillies do contend for the wild card, but the farm system is in better place or better shape. And I think this is where AI says the reality kind of shifts. Yeah, we'd have another World Series championship, but the rebuild doesn't take as long because you don't have to make the moves then for Halladay. Maybe they still make the move for Hunter Pence. Who knows? But the rebuild kind of gets accelerated because you don't have to trade Cole Hamels, and then you team him up with Aaron Nola, and then Hamels kind of becomes the old vet mentor. And in this alternate reality, Charlie Manuel stays until he retires. He never gets fired. I guess winning 2 World Series will do that for you. But what are your thoughts on this? Could it have worked out? Should the Phillies have kept Cliff Lee and Roy Halladay for the 2010 season? I say absolutely. I've always said that. But could this have played out that way? Let me know your thoughts on that. 267-495-8531. That's the Back to the Future voice and text line. Get that. Anything else Philly sports related off of your chest, hit me up on my social media. But that was Fridays with AI, brought to you as always by Philly Goat. Go to phillygoat.com. They have a wide selection of Philly sports-based apparel. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery to take 10% off of your order. And they've been pumping out shirts like it's your job. We talked about the 80s. Remember Garbage Pail Kids? They have Garbage Pail Phils. There's like 3 different shirts now. Castellanos, Harper, and Schwarber. Just go check it out. And if you remember the Garbage Pail Kids, but they always are our sponsor for Fridays with AI. This one, let me know your thoughts. I think this is a very plausible and realistic one and would have led to at least one more World Series.